What is your "this person has no idea how the real world works" moment? A student working part-time at my laboratory at a university came into my office and asked, "So what all can I eat in the refrigerator?" I didn't know I was supposed to bring my own lunch. I looked at him, stunned, and replied, "Nothing. That food is what people brought for their own lunch, but you can use my Grubhub to order." He did not understand. It took 4 tries to get him to realize he can't just eat someone else's lunch. Same student. I walked into the lab room and told him I made a full pot of coffee in the office and he could help himself. A pot of coffee? What's that? He never used a coffee maker other than a Keurig before and didn't even know it was a thing. He was fired a month later for stealing chloroform. I lived with some Japanese exchange students during the final summer of college. They were really nice girls, but one of them, Mari, 19 years old, obviously had no idea how anything worked. She spoke the best English and I was tutoring some of the other girls, while they helped me with my Japanese. But Mari would constantly call me to come to get her because she thought we had free buses. All the buses. After all, we were students. That wasn't the issue. I could deal with that. It was a whole new culture she was learning. But what happened that made me realize Mari could not be left on her own was when she ended up in Eloy, Arizona, which was 400 miles and 5 hours from where we were. She had been talking to some guy on campus. He said he was visiting family in Arizona, and she said, "I want to go." He just took her with him, and she went without even telling us. She had just assumed the guy would take her back, but he said he couldn't because he was staying in Arizona. So I had to arrange a ticket, get her on the bus by the phone, and then pick her up 2 hours away because she missed her second bus by napping. A dude, 18-year-old, in boot camp got a letter from home and I can see he is agitated, being 22 and concerned for his well-being. I asked him if he wanted to talk about it. I'm thinking a Dear John letter or the mom and dad divorcing letter. He dead ass told me that his younger brother got a Mercedes for his birthday and that he was pissed BC he only got the BMW. Can't remember what I said, but I knew boot camp was gonna knock his dick in the dirt. It did. My boss told me about a friend of his, who told him of a life hack. She would get her bills in the mail, not pay them, and then wait a couple of months to pay. Then she would cry so the debt collectors would feel bad and waive the fees for not paying on time. That was her brilliant life hack. The other day, my 18-year-old brother-in-law got married to his high school sweetheart in a parking garage so that they can live off campus at college together. Girlfriends, now wife, mother is an ordained minister. His parents, my in-laws, were very upset and he couldn't understand why because it's just a fake marriage for school. "Oh no, sweet boy, you are married." I just laughed and laughed. I love him dearly. He is a demos. When my roommate, who never once paid for rent or groceries or anything, turned down the only job offer they have ever gotten, in front of me, twice. They were so desperate they called him twice, offering good pay, during COVID, and he had the gall to say no in front of me. His excuse was, "No, I'm sure there's something better. $20 an hour is garbage in this city _ My mom was spontaneously in the city I live in and asked me to meet her for supper. I told her I was on the bus and it would take me 45 minutes to get to her, even though in a car it would be a 15-minute drive. She said, "Just tell the bus driver to bring you here now." She has no concept of how public transportation works. Yes, thank you all, public, not pubic. I worked for a very sheltered and entitled mother as a nanny. Shortly after I got hired, she called me at 3 a.m. asking me to come in because the baby wouldn't stop crying. When I said no, she responded with "Butter the nanny," and that was a constant thing. At one point she got sick of breastfeeding and asked if I could start nursing. All of this was very casual too, like she wasn't really mean about it. mine is a coworker. He believes that any time his ex does something with their daughter and he doesn't agree with it, he needs to call CPS. Ex has daughter sharing a room with older sister. Time to call CPS. He calls late at night and kid is sleeping and ex won't wake her up. Time to call CPS and caseworkers. Ex current husband won't give the coworker his pay stubs. Time to call a caseworker. Dude has CPS and his caseworker on speed dial. The dude doesn't understand why CPS and his caseworker keep telling him that since the child is not abused and or neglected and his ex is doing everything the court has told her that she needs to do, there is nothing illegal happening. Dude is still trying to find ways to control the ex and what goes on in her house. Had a friend who was in some uncredited scam online college for her master's degree in medical billing or some dumb shit. She was on a loan program that was sending her about $5,000 every 3 months directly to her via check in the mail. This was her only source of income. She kept calling it a grant that didn't need to be paid back. She was flat-ass broke as a joke for 2 months, but then the check would come in and she would be living the good life for a few weeks before being poor again. We tried to do an intervention and show her the insane interest rate that would be backdated as soon as her school was done, but she didn't want anyone to bust her free money dreams. She just kept talking about all the money she would eventually be making billing insurance companies. Turns out she wasn't even logging into the online college or even attempting to get this degree. She thought the money was free, the degree was automatic and the job was guaranteed. Some people are beyond help. Back at the end of university, I met up with my rich friend who just got a brand new car from his dad worth plus £60,000 after getting his driving license. So naturally we went for a ride. At one point he asked me, "What are you going to do after uni?" To which I answered, "Find a job in this whilst investing, slowly growing side incomes." He got very confused then and asked me, "But why do you need a job? Can't you just start your business?" He had no idea of the struggle to pay bills and think about your budget, etc. A first-year college student of mine thought that assignment deadlines were guidelines. Nothing was handed in on time. She emailed me the night before her final exam to see if I'd take some of her late work. I told her hell number. She threatened to report me. I let her. She failed, got reprimanded and was eventually expelled due to plagiarism. Two things immediately come to mind. First, being a young girl I used to work with at Target. She was hired for the 6am to 30 p.m. shift, but she regularly showed up between 8 and 9 am without any good explanation. After the third time or so, our supervisor asked her if she had something to do in the morning, such as getting kids ready for school, that required a later shift. If so, she could be moved to the 8am 30 p.m. shift. The girl's response was, "No, I still want to leave at 2:30. I just don't want to get up that early." She was fired when she refused to acknowledge that you cannot make your own schedule. Second is one of my roommates, a 23-year-old who was quite literally unable to take care of herself in any capacity beyond ordering fast food. I once heard her yell at her mother because she was filling out a job application and got stuck on a section. Her mom was trying to help her finish, but she got frustrated and screamed, "Can't you just fill it out? I want to go play my games." Before you ask, number, there are no disabilities, she's just lazy, spoiled and incredibly stupid. We had a relatively new hire where I work, a young woman relatively fresh out of college, because we had been colleagues in another department when she was interning. She often ate lunch with me. She frequently complained about how bad her coworkers were. I didn't know them, but it seemed odd. After about a year, she applied for, and got a different job at the company, but the new job didn't start for 2 months. She asked me if I thought she should take a leave of absence until then, because she didn't think she could stand working 2 more months with her current co-workers. I asked what they were doing that was making her so unhappy. She complained that they often told their mutual boss that she would come in late, take very long lunches, then leave early. Do you do those things? I asked. Well, yes, but they don't have to be bitches about it, she replied. When working at a video game company, we had a summer where we had 3 instances of random people from a nearby art school sneak into the building and cold crash the art director. The first time, we just figured it was some young student oblivious to the multiple levels of security and protections around our IP. He grouped up with a bunch of guys during their smoke break, walked in with them, then just started wandering the halls looking for an office with an art director plaque on it. This kid was let off with one hell of a stern warning. Very detailed emails went out to all employees to keep our eyes out for unfamiliar faces without badges, and to keep our own employee badges visible. The second time it happened, a student from the same campus walked in through the side door with the group, but when they asked about his ID, he lied about having a job interview with the art director. They tell him to stay put in the hall, but follows them anyway. He is ushered into the art director's office, and in the 2 seconds it takes the director to call security, this dope is already going 100 into his "boy am I the artist for you" pitch. He is told to never apply for our company, and their name gets shared with all associated dev studios under the publisher's umbrella. Again, emails go out, security is tightened, and side doors are now exit only. The third time it happened, we don't even know the details. The company email didn't specify how yet another random student from this art school managed to locate and sit himself down in waiting in the art director's office while he was at a meeting, but the art director walks into his desk, and is startled shitless by an excited "Hello, future employer, what the hell?" At this point, police are called. We have had enough of this, and a message needs to be sent. Stop trespassing into our office, you idiots. But as this student is getting questioned and processed, we discover what is happening. It all makes sense. We now know why it is this one particular art school. There was a teacher at that campus that was encouraging students to sneak in and force directors and managers into cold interviews. He explained to them how easy it is to just follow a group of employees and during their smoke break, to just meander the halls aimlessly as long as you look like you belong. He was giving them strategies and techniques to blend in, not raise suspicions, and locate who would be best for an interview. All the while, teaching they'll be impressed by your initiative. They'll know how much you want the job if you do that. Besides, the worst thing they can do is say no. Surprise, the worst thing they can do is a misdemeanor trespassing charge and hefty citation, as well as blacklist you permanently in the industry as a security liability. It's so unfortunate that these students were the ones who were punished. They're just impressionable kids putting trust in a demos art teacher. We don't know why this teacher thought this was okay or what decade they think they're living in. But it's unnerving to think that kids are paying so much money to receive shit advice from some delusional lunatic with no idea how the real world works. Their teacher should have been severely reprimanded for doing this to his students. But after intercepting another prospective infiltrator in the front walk before getting anywhere, it was pretty clear this teacher was still employed. Edit. Apparently people are misunderstanding the implication of police are called. In their defense, so did I when I first heard our company actually called the police. I too expressed concern that we were being too extreme. Fortunately, wasn't as bad as I envisioned. This wasn't an urgent response where they kick in the door guns drawn, handcuff the kid, and cart him off to prison. This was to make a formal police report and get it in the records. We had an increase in trespassers at our location, something about company insurance or whatnot. Probably had a little chat with the kid out front, wrote him a citation for trespassing, and escorted him away from the premises. If the details still seem wonky, this was based on the account of my own boss explaining why we had police out front that morning. What do you mean? There's a global bike shortage, can't you just order more? What do you mean? That bike won't show up until August, can't you just bump up the shipment date? Number, we can't just order more, we can't just bump up the shipment date. If we could, we would. A fed-up bike shop employee. My cousin is 47 and a couple of years ago a relative died and left him $10K. He'd always lived with my grandma and had a structured settlement of $400 a month from an accident he was in as a teenager, into heavy drugs, never employed, bumming around living like a kid with an allowance. He told me that he wanted to get a car, an apartment, and then wanted my advice of his to invest the rest of the $10K. Come on, man. An example of myself, I had thought, upon entering college, that I could feasibly earn a living and be comfortable through just working in music. I thought that performing music, playing music, and selling my own music would be enough to afford a house, a car, groceries, and all of life's necessities. Let's just say that I haven't quite arrived at that point yet. My brother is 26 years old and has had one job. He worked there for like 2 months. Our cousin helped him get hired. It was the easiest job in the world. A team of people drilled wells, agriculture, and my brother would come at night and watch the equipment. He had a new RV to sleep in. They let him watch TV, bring his dog, smoke, drink, eat whatever he wanted. The only thing he really had to do was be there. He wanted to go to dinner with his girlfriend and asked for the day off. His boss told him no because he was the only person they had to stay there at night. He told his boss to fuck off and quit on the spot. To this day, he doesn't work, pay bills, or do anything with his life. He smokes weed and plays old video games, like random racing games on PS2. Sad waste of a life, IMO. My son was 3 days away from when his credit card bill was due and needed to borrow money, which was fine. He expressed his relief that I gave him the loan, saying I was afraid they'd cut off the card and not let me buy groceries this week if I didn't pay the balance. In other words, he's never let the balance roll over, just as I taught him. But he has no clue that he can actually let the balance roll over or pay a portion of the bill, and he'll be charged the rate plus a fee. I think I'm not going to tell him about that part. A young lad I work with was talking about how now he had a full-time job he was going to buy a house. He thought he was going to buy a $150K house and pay the bank back the $150K he borrowed, and nothing else. I had a young girl I worked with ask me, why don't you just buy a car? It's not that expensive. When I complained my bus was late, I then had her admit over a series of questions that her parents bought her car for her. Her parents paid the registration, her parents paid for the insurance, and in return for driving her brother to school once a week her parents paid for all her petrol money. This was the same girl who had her pay from her job paid into her parents' account, and was then allowed to withdraw as much money as she wanted to buy things. I doubt she even knew how much we were paid. My classmate's parents or grandparents, inheritance, bought him a house in Mumbai just because he wanted to move there for his 3-year degree. If you guys don't know, Mumbai is like Manhattan of India, expensive rents and jam-packed with 1%ers. When he moved to Germany, his dad bought him a condo there. Imagine the conversion rates of to INR. Now we're well off too, but not like this guy. When I wanted to move to Berlin for a few months, I asked him about rent and process and decent but affordable areas. He straight up told me, why can't my dad just buy a house next door? It's simpler than all this. Thankfully his ignorance wasn't coupled with arrogance. Conversation with my mother one day. Subject around the table was about overfishing. Catches were drying up. Mom says the government should subsidize fish because fish is good for you. I respond that we're already overfishing and if they subsidize it, then the situation will just become worse. And what are we going to do when there's no fish left? Her answer, well, then we'll just have to eat tin fish, won't we? I'm like, where do you think the fish in the tins come from?